Hi guys, welcome to Learn with W3 Schools. My name is Dr. Zeeshan and today we are going to dive into the magical world of props in ReactJS. Let's crack the code of passing the data between components. Props are one of the most fundamental concepts in React, and once you understand them, you will unlock the ability to build dynamic, reusable components with ease. This course is tailored for the first time learners, so buckle up as we explore props, their syntax, how they work, and how they make React applications super powerful. So let's get started. Here's the plan for today's session. We will start with the basics, what props are and why they are useful. Then we will look at some syntax and gradually dive into the real problems where props come to the rescue. By the end of this course, you will not only understand props, but will also know how to use them effectively in your own React projects. So, by the end of this course, you will master props in React.js. You will learn to use them and send the data, pass the functions, and even make components reusable. This knowledge will be your stepping stone to building scalable and maintainable React applications. Plus, you will solve the real world problems with the practical code examples. How cool is that, right? So stick around, watch the video till the end, and let me know in comments what you learned and how you found this tutorial as well. Okay, so let's begin now. So let's break it down. Props are like packages of information that one component can send to another. They are always passed down the component tree, like parents giving advice to their kids. Hey, here's your name, age, and favorite color. That becomes your information. So props carry that information from one parent to the child, even from one component to another component, from one person to another. Props are immutable, so we need to be very understandable of that as well. That props are immutable means they cannot be changed, meaning the receiving components can't change them as well. So the value, once you pass through the props, the property, for example, once your parent set your name, you technically can't change it. This makes our components predictable and easy to debug. So that's why we always say props are what we call read only. Now, props are awesome, but why? Props are like secret sauce that makes React components so flexible. Imagine building a UI where everything is connected and dynamic. That's what props help you achieve. Need a profile card that updates for every user, or a button that triggers different actions based on the screen? Props make it happen, and they do it in a clean, organized way. That becomes the major advantage of using it, facilitating basic communication between components. So you can have two components, and props will allow you to communicate to and fro between the components as well. They encourage something called reusability by allowing components to adopt based on incoming props. Simply the complex simply they do simplify the complex UI by breaking it into small manageable pieces. So based on the different requirements, data that we need to process, we can create more components and just pass them props and they can work on that. The application can be dynamic, user interface, interactive components, or reusable components and whatnot. Let's look at an example of how props are working. So props are technically very easy to use. When you pass a data to a component, you use an attribute, just like in HTML. In the child component, you access it by using props. So for example, in this case, the parent gives the child a name John or Zeeshan, and the child displays it. So here we created a component called child component. It takes something called a prop. In general sense, and if I'm creating a function in JavaScript, we just simply call them arguments. Okay, so if you have done JavaScript before, or any programming language for that matter, like Java, C Sharp, Python, every language takes arguments when we call a function. So for example, I have a function called my name and I take an argument. This can be a standard function. Okay, so this function in React actually is known as a prop. That's how they basically work. So here you see we created a function called child component, and we give it a prop. That's all it is. That's what exactly a prop is. Bracket start, bracket close. We say hello and we want to use the value inside the prop. So we use this props as a prefix, dot operator, and then the value that it holds. The way it holds the value, in fact, that's where it differentiates from other languages. It holds the value in a key and a value pair. So here name is becoming a key and my name itself becomes the value. Okay, these both things are actually passed to the prop. So both of this are actually passed to the prop. So now here we are creating a component called child component. Basically we are accessing the component inside our another parent component, and when we access the component, because it needs a prop, so we give it a name and value. That's how it basically reads it. So this name and value information is the key thing here. This name and key value here, this becomes the props data, and the props itself actually is the accessor component that holds that value. Within it, it actually holds the value in form of key and value pair. So we have props dot name. Now name is not mentioned here, but this name actually is coming from this name here. So this name has been accessed from here. Okay, that's how props work. They are working technically like an argument, but we don't call them argument because argument usually only take a single value, either x or for example value 10. So if I use the variable argument, it will only have a value, something called a single value, x, y, or a character a, or a name. Okay, but in this case it holds a key and a value pair. That's why it's known as a little bit different in form of props. So we pass the data by calling the component in key value and it's equals to value pair. This can be a value, integer, number, string, whatever you want. Any standard JavaScript values are actually legally allowed here. That's how we create the props. And to use it again, we use the word props dot the key thing. So it will print the value Zeeshan. So it will print my name here. That's how it goes. Let's look at another problem and try to understand another example of how props are working. So here our first problem. We want to build a greeting card that says welcome Zeeshan, my name, or welcome some other person. That depends on what name we are passing to it. Okay, so props come to the rescue. Parent sends the name and favorite color to the card component, which customizes the message. This shows how props make a UI dynamic and personal. So in this case, we have a function called app. Again, another component. The main app function, it returns, and it returns again what we call a greeting card. So what exactly is a greeting card? Again, another component that we have created here. This greeting card component now needs a prop. So we pass it as an argument a prop called name Zeeshan and a prop called name blue. Now again, this differentiates from the arguments because argument contain one value. In this case, we are just saying, hey, this will contain props. It can have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, depending on how many you have. So currently we have one key name and key value. We have second one color value. I can have more as well. Now based on this, I can make decisions and customize it. So that's what makes things much more interesting and simplifying within our ReactJS. So now we are passing a name and color. So the props will have actually both this information as an associative array form in a key and value form. Okay, so now we say, hey, I want to use this. So I will say props dot name. This name will be printed here. Props dot color will be printed here. So if I create another function, if I pass it something else, that information will be printed here. So same component actually is here, is used to print multiple values, can be used to print multiple values using the same arguments, having just something called props. Okay, so I don't need to specify different length of arguments. I don't need to specify different data types of arguments. I just specify props here. Okay, that's what makes this guy so wonderful. This props make everything easy. So you can pass it like, for example, one value, two value, next time it can be three value. If I create another greeting card, I can pass it four values. So some will have one value, some will have two, some will have three, depending on how I logically define my code. I can easily work with that. So that's what the beauty of props is, and that's how the props works. They are used to transfer the data, but at the same time, they are able to handle the key value pair and multiple key value pairs. So let's look at another example. So here where it gets even more interesting. Props aren't just for data. you can pass functions too. Again, props do not only use data. That's why we're not calling them arguments, just like in JavaScript or in the language, because for arguments, they only take single value. However, when we talk about props, they actually can also use functions. So this is super handy when a child component needs to trigger something in the parent, like showing an alert or updating a state. Notice how the parent function is passed as a props and called when the button is clicked. So here we create an app function. We have again a button, show alert. So we define a function. So button handle click show alert. So this will call this thing. So whenever I have a click function, I want to execute it. I co execute the show alert function here. So we define alert button click. Okay. So in this case, now we have a function called button or another component called button, but I want to pass my function as an alert here. So this button actually has been component called here, and instead of passing it a value, I am passing it this show alert function. So this show alert arrow function that I've created here has been passed as an argument to my button. So this handle click will be used here. So now in order to use this, I'm saying, hey, I have a button. Again, we create a button, define an on click event on it. Again, expression and angle brackets, and then I'm going to say props dot handle click. So this handle click is going to call this function here, handle click. This handle click now has a value, not a single value, but in fact another function itself. And that's why we again are using something called these angle brackets here. So do note this thing. Every time we use these square angle brackets or curly brackets, sorry, they basically represent an expression, means something is going to be evaluated in form of JavaScript. So because this is a function, we use the function to be evaluated. We use these curly brackets. So this is basically saying passing the function using props. So using props, you can not only pass the data, but the function as well. So here we have created another function component, and we have passed that function component here when we call the button component. So the button component now, instead of passing a value, has a function component. So this button is there. The prop will actually read this hand button component value, which is again another function. Call button props dot handle. So when the handle is done, it actually executes the function. Okay, so this time the value will not be printed, but the execution of this function here will be carried out. Make sense? Hopefully a little bit, right? Let me just raise it. So what we're trying to do here is we say, hey, or in other words, let me define the execution flow of it. Let me erase a few things. Let's go back here and we say when the code executes, it's first going to call this app function here because this is the default function. So this function gets executed first. Then it defines another function here. So this becomes execution second, but this is not executed until the button is actually clicked. So this is not getting executed at all. So now the second thing that gets executed is this thing here, button code. So the second thing actually executes this thing. This will actually implement this button here. So what this is doing is it's calling this function component here. So when this function component is called, this is going to again return an HTML content. So this again itself is our HTML data. So this time this is like the third value. When HTML is executed, this content will be printed on the screen. As soon as user clicks on this event, so now we are waiting for the user to click on the event. So now we see, hey, on click event is there. This is the fourth. So as soon as user clicks on a button, an event is triggered. This event will actually call props.handleClick, which actually is this thing here. So now this function will be executed in terms of the fifth value, and the alert message is displayed. Make a little bit of sense? That's how props work if we pass the function definition. Okay, let's look at another example. So props shine when it comes to reusability. Imagine you need a products of cards for multiple items. Props let you reuse the same component with a different data. This makes your code cleaner, dry, which basically means don't repeat yourself, and easier to maintain. It's like creating a template and filling filling in the blanks. So if I want to create a simple card which has some data in it, For example, it can have an image, it can have a name, it can have a value, it can have some description, product, blah 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 things. I would just define this card 1 as a product card component. This would become my one component. Then I will just use props to pass in the data to fill in this bit of information. So this information, this information, this information, I will just fill in. So everything else is basically being designed by my component. The information is dynamically changing. To do that, we define a function called product card. Okay, returning again multiple lines of code. So because it's a multiple line of code, we have again bracket star, bracket close, semicolon. So we need to have a div. Again, every time we return, it needs to have an HTML as a return. We can only return HTML. If it's a single line, you can write it on the same line, multiple lines, brackets. Again, we have talked about this in the whole React course. If you haven't seen it, again, follow the channel. Everything is there. Then within this, we create h2 props. So we're calling the props product name. So for example, the product name is coming from here. Then we can say proper price. So the second value price can come from here, price. Add to cart button. So the another button that we create here. Again, this customization depends on whatever you want to do within your HTML. So anything can be here. So now notice the key thing. We have props. Again, using the same props word dot product name, props dot price, props dot any other information that you want. When you call this component inside your main app function, we again call the return div and we say, hey, product card. So because this product card is there, we call it once. Product name is going to be laptop, price, and any other information is there. If you want to put, you can just give it here. Then product 2, second product, again you call the same card. Reusability, the whole layout is already there. You just change the data that you want to be replaced with. This data can come from, for example, JSON or an SQL, anywhere from database. Any type of data is coming, you can dynamically load the content and display the cards. That way your website basically becomes faster with a reusable code. Again, using props, just changing the content wherever necessary. So what did we learn? To wrap it up, props are the backbone of React component based architecture. They let you pass data, control behavior, and make your UI come to life. Mastering props is your first step to becoming a React pro. So go ahead, experiment with props, and start building something amazing. Share with me in your comments what you did, and I will be happy to check it out. Okay, so great job today. Hopefully you understand and learn some useful information. That concludes this today's session, and I hope to see you in next videos. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to check out these cool videos. This is Dr. Zeeshan signing off.